Welkom bij de Muziekscene late avondshow. Ik heb een tafeltje gekregen zoals dat gaat bij van die late night shows met een prachtig tafelkleedje, een goede stoel, 2 sofa's en daar komen zo meteen 4 gasten in te zitten. Niki en Virgo die hebben jullie daarnet al gehoord. En zo meteen ook nog de gast Stijn Lemaire van Vibe en saxofonist Matthias de Kramer. Maar ik roep er eerst onze eerste spreker van daarnet bij en dat is Virgo Silaman. Hi Virgo.
Hi, hello.
Thanks again for your presentation. Music strategy seems to be a very useful thing, but it takes a lot of effort to work and to create a good one, I think. Why did music policy become your passion?
Very short story. As mentioned, I was a musician. In the beginning, I became passionately involved in music education. Then I became passionately involved in music education administration. And through these circles, I ended up going to the ministries, etc., like one does. And then about 10 years ago, I started an organization and ran it for 6 years called Muziekscene, which is the Estonian music export organization. And that, funded by many kinds of funds from the government, I began to understand this as a policy instrument. This organization, it's supposed to meet policy goals, and I was trying to understand why policy making seemed to be so irrational and sometimes also irresponsible. And so I developed an interest into understanding how then could we make better policy. Is it a question of ideas? Is it a question of processes? Is it a question of people somewhere in the system? Is it a question of education for the sector people to become better at advocating for themselves and so on and so forth? So I went back to school, I did a degree, and now I find myself turned from a guitar player into somebody super interested in bureaucracy.
That's fascinating.
My friends said the same, they were very confused.
Yes, because does music in itself has to be your passion too when doing this, because you play music yourself?
I used to play, I don't play anymore. I think it would be difficult to try to see a very interesting policy field as just sort of a regular political scientist if you didn't have a passion for music.
Right.
I think it wouldn't make much sense either. I think it takes a lot of inside understanding of the concerns of musicians and music professionals and so on. So I think it really helps to be attuned from the get-go. Yeah.
To have both sides. Okay, we'll take a deep dive in a minute with all 4 of you, with all the speakers here, including Niki. Was there anything in Niki's presentation that struck you specifically?
Well, I mean, it always strikes me overall that there are people that are doing the work that Nick is doing, but also that there's this willingness on a political level to provide the funding and the initiative to empower that kind of work, more than maybe whatever specific activity it is. It's the fact that somewhere somebody recognizes it makes sense to invest time and energy in music, that there's a social value in it. I think that always makes me admire.
Okay.
Not always lost.
Okay, it's time for our second guest. Here is Niki McRae. Heroic music, love it. Niki, thank you so much for showing us the journey of Belfast and what the title of the UNESCO City of Music implies. You're deeply passionate, that was very clear, with the Irish music industry. So how did that all start? What is your personal story?
So I won't go into it in too much detail because it's quite sad, but for me, I was saying to people in the restaurant earlier that the Irish music industry truly saved my life. When I was quite young, when I was a teenager, I was homeless for a while and I would go to gigs, I would have a community. And that's how I landed my first job in the music industry, and it's just gone from there. And every time I get to do something for the music community, it feels like I'm giving back to the people who gave back to me. And at the point at which the role came up for UNESCO, it was just one of those moments in life where you think, oh my God, this couldn't have been written. Because I had just left a job of 6 years because they decided they no longer wanted to support Northern Ireland. They wanted to focus their efforts more on England, and that didn't sit with me. My focus is always going to be Ireland.
Yeah.
So I quit with no savings and thought, oh no. And 2 weeks later, the job came up with UNESCO, and I immediately went for it, and now I get to do everything I want to be doing for the sector.
Wow, okay, because the music sector, it's a bit of a crazy world with all its genres, people, actors. How do you navigate that specific world?
For me, because I'm very fortunate to have tried so many different hats on in the music industry, I have a bit of an idea of each part of the sector. So anytime I get to have one-to-ones with people about what they want to see happen, I can come in with a bit of an understanding, but also I genuinely want to hear what they want. I was saying to people earlier that I was running a conference over the weekend, and people were going around the room talking about what they do in music, and a man that I'd never met before said, I do this and Belfast City Council don't care about what I do. So I thought, okay. We had a chat and he told me what he wants to do, and I said, you know, that is directly in our music strategy, and now he is going away to write a paper for what we can do to fund the activity he wants.
Okay.
So it's just all about that engagement and making what the experts in the music industry, the people on the ground, want to see happen.
Okay, you found a great passion too in providing funding, support for artists, for instance, but you also co-founded that special camp. I mentioned it earlier, Soft Gut Song Camp. Sounds so good, but what is it?
Oh, every time people have to say the name, I think, why did I choose that? It was originally going to be called Dad Bod, which may have been a mistake in itself. Essentially, I found in my previous role that I was always finding opportunities for artists in Ireland to go to songwriting camps in England or go in the south of Ireland or elsewhere in Europe. When there are so many people in Belfast and the north of Ireland that they could just be getting on a train and writing with, or jumping on a laptop and writing with. But because opportunities are so few in Ireland, people feel quite competitive, they hold their cards close to their chest, and we wanted to try to find a way to break down those barriers and show people that working on a community level could be just as passionate and fulfilling as it could be to go further afield to do it. It's essentially the opposite of the UNESCO work. So what we do is we take everybody to an analog recording studio with 3 studio setups in the middle of nowhere. There's no Wi-Fi. There are donkeys, there are cats, there are dogs, and there is mud. But you're trapped there for 3 days. And we don't tell anybody who's going to be there until they arrive, so it's always a surprise. And we cater it to ensure it's a mix of skills, it's a mix of genres, but complementary genres, and there's always a gender balance. So 6 artists and 3 producers at every single camp. And we make sure that the point isn't the tracks that they write every day, it's about their networking and their development. And on the final day, we sit everybody down and we map out their careers. Where are you now and how can we help you get to the next stage? We continue communications with every member of our camps every year, and then they never get cut off.
Okay, I'll never forget, Soft Gut Song Camp. So Virgo's talk was very inspiring too. Was there anything you will remember, like specifically from what he taught us?
The moment I met Virgo on the Zoom last week, I came away thinking he is a genius and I need to mine his brain for things that we can bring back to Belfast. I've already spoken to so many people in the council saying that we need to work with him to get our act together on a grander scale. And during your presentation, I know I said to you, I had my phone out on so many slides. One thing that you have that I don't have at all is a real understanding of what is happening in all of these other cities and how it can inform best practice. I work in a little bit of a silo at times. I'm working on the Belfast music strategy for the Belfast music scene without the consideration of what has worked elsewhere and what could be better. So having the opportunity to learn from you about what's been going on, I will be taking that home and trying to ingrain it into our practice. Stealing it.
Stealing is always good. Stealing is always good. Okay, it's time for our third guest. Here is Stijn Lemaire. Hey Stijn.
Hey Kirsten.
We share the same last name, no family though, and we share a passion for music. Since I've known you, I always call you Stijn from Vibe. That's what many people call you, I think.
It's my family name.
Stijn from Vibe, yes. The support center for artists and the music industry in Flanders and Brussels. What are you doing exactly? Maybe I don't know if there's anyone who doesn't know it or doesn't know Vibe, but maybe very shortly, what do you do?
I'm the team leader and I coach the team that works on talent development and local music policy. But we have a lot of, we call it leverage projects, and I hope all the musicians in the room, they know our platform, Vibe platform, ve.be/platform. It's a platform with more than 20,000 artists. We provide play opportunities, media opportunities, but our organization has also 2 people giving free advice. Silke is here, she's also from Gent. She gives free advice to musicians. An applause for Silke, yes. But we do a lot. For example, we together with VRT, we created the Week van de Belgische Muziek. And this week we try to give exposure to all the artists and the music industry because they deserve it. And the big audience who consumes music, they don't really know how hard it is to be a musician and how important it is to support musicians. So we try to create also a little bit awareness in Flanders. But we do a lot. We do also the music industry awards. We have Belgian Booms. We try to export international talent, Belgian talent abroad. And the most people don't know, we also support cities and communities and municipalities.
Yeah, busy week. The Week van de Belgische Muziek with the Music Industry Awards as well. Are you going there tomorrow?
Yes, I will be there.
Okay, I will be there as well. But support your local scene. I think that's a very important one as well for Vibe.
It's one of our baselines.
Right.
Yeah. Every artist, no artist is born on the stage of Werchter or on Tomorrowland. Every artist starts in their own neighborhood, beneath their own church, like they say in Flanders. And so I think it's very important that we at Vibe support also the local scenes. And we do that by a project called Local Heroes. Mm-hmm. We do that by supporting venues with our platform, supporting artists with our platform, but also with supporting cities and municipalities with a beautiful thing called music policy, a music strategy. Because artists are total, and that's one important thing also for the city of Gent, and artists are totally invisible. They don't exist for the local governments, the municipalities and the cities, because they are not in a cultural board. They don't have a structure where they can be in a board. So there was no policy for musicians in Flanders until 2015. We had 3 cities who had a policy for artists. In 2015, 3 out of 300. So there was no local music policy for you guys. It did not exist. And we thought, that is crazy shit, that is injustice. So we start working, and I think that's also the reason why I'm here. Yeah. At this moment, we influenced, how you say it, we worked very hard on pursuing cities and municipalities to start with that. Yeah. And at this moment, there are more than 60 cities and municipalities in Flanders who are working on a local music strategy. And that's very important.
Okay, and that's why Vibe is so important. Much more to come. First, our 4th and final guest, a visible artist. Here is Matthias de Kraan. Hey Matthias, good to see you.
You.
You are the musician within the pack here, so also composer, producer, but truly one of the most exciting saxophone players in our country as a member of Noordman. I give the short introduction because I can do the long introduction, but there's so many things you do. What's the latest thing you've been doing?
At the moment, I'm working with my friends of Noordman.
Yes.
We're recording a new album in 2 weeks, so we are working now
Practicing.
towards that, practicing and still writing, stuff like that, deadlines, catching up with deadlines. The friends are here, by the way. And I'm just back from Morocco as well,
Okay.
where I started working on a new album.
Okay, because you did a solo album last year, A House Where I Dream.
Yes.
Yes, it was
Correct.
2024.
Yes,
Huh?
2024. Yeah.
Perfect for windy winter days. Huh?
Correct.
Yes. And,
It works
and
really
comfort
well
and
for
peace.
every season.
It's
actually.
true, but today it worked perfectly as well. So, by the way, was it always music for you? Was it, like they say, your first love, music?
Music was always my first love and my last.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yes.
When did
Till the
it
end of my
start?
days. It's a bit strange to sit here though, because I see all my great hardworking colleagues, and I'm the only one to sit here. So.
But you represent all of them, I think.
No.
Tonight.
Not at all. But voila. I hope I don't say too many.
Voila, you
stupid
are here in the
stuff.
sofa tonight. So
Voila.
you are part of the music scene in Gent, that's for sure.
That's for sure.
How would you describe that scene, the scene in Gent?
It's been alive for quite a while. At least it's been going for a long time already. When I wasn't active yet, of course. I always liked it very much. It's also one of the reasons I stayed here in Ghent, because I always felt there were so many interesting people, musicians and bands coming from Ghent. So that's one thing that really kept me here in this city. I often thought, should I move to a bigger city or another city? But we want to keep the vibe alive. Here in Ghent, I think. Yeah, too many great people.
Do that. Let's keep the vibe alive. Good, we are going to take that deep dive now. I will hop from one team to another and you guys just jump in whenever you feel. So first of all, the leading question here tonight was, of course, what is the benefit of having that title, the UNESCO Creative City of Music? And I'm looking at you guys, Nikki and Virgo, because just like Gent, Belfast and Tallinn have that title, and we've seen a few things like what does it mean for that music scene? What opportunities or benefits does the network offer for the music scene and individual artists? But if you could take one very specific thing to implement here in Gent, what would you pick then? What would that be?
For me, I think it would be taking advantage of the fact that the network offers the opportunity for exchanges with cities that otherwise you may never have considered exploring before. Ireland is an island. We are significantly cut off from many other parts of the world, and we're quite down on ourselves about that, and at times we don't seek opportunities further afield as a result of this. Opening the doors of the UNESCO network and coming back from events like this and letting you know about these festivals, these venues, everything that's going on means that every time you engage with a local member of your community after a UNESCO event, they're more aware of what is out there for them. Especially again for us in a post-Brexit environment where traditional touring is far more difficult now. We want to be looking at these cities, these more grassroots events, and seeing how we can utilize them for the sector.
Yeah. What's it like for Tallinn?
Let me answer more generally. I think it's important to keep in mind that a label is just an imaginary thing. So a label does not have any benefit or value or meaning in and of itself. It only has the benefit and the value and the meaning that you, as the city's music scene, music ecosystem, give to it. I think that's very, very important, because sometimes you might get caught into this sort of transactional thinking of, is there something to be got from? Oh, it's UNESCO, seems very big and possibly rich organization. No, I think it's all about creating a focus, sort of mental focus around this topic of the music life in the city and so on, and then making it work for the music life in the city.
Yeah.
And then, yes, it's great, it's a network, so that it's easier to find other cities who potentially then share these interests, use the exchange value. I think, as far as I know, in the UNESCO network in the past, it's not been used that well. It's now becoming more and more active, it seems, which is wonderful. And just to maybe answer the Tallinn thing, again, it was a moment where finally the city administration and the music sector came together to discuss the music sector in the city for the first time. And once you have that going, so much more new opportunities open. So I think, it's the focus on music life itself that can be made to work, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And
the only thing I wanted to add, just to build upon what you're saying, that it's what you do with it, is to remove a myth that people have around UNESCO, that a lot of the cities don't have to their knowledge, is that UNESCO don't give the city money. A lot of it's a constant conversation I'm having in Belfast, where people say, what about the £1 million that UNESCO gave you? And I have to say, no, UNESCO don't give money to anybody. We got that money because we had to prove that we did something to get the status, and that was just within the city. So every city has a different budget led by the city or the people with the status, so it's so important to bring that up.
Yeah, okay.
It's your own money.
And use the city as a stage, I think, for Gent, really important as well. I think different initiatives can complement each other. How do you see that, for Gent? What is a very important thing to bear in mind always, when you have a city that you can use as a stage for so many things?
I think Gent I'm a proud Gentian. And to be honest, I also can be very critical thinking of my city. And Gent is a unique ecosystem of musicians, artists, venues, music industry, and the Gentians themselves, they don't know it. They are blessed with it. And the UNESCO label we have, I think we have it since 2009. So we have it for a long time. I was always a little bit proud, but I never understood what it meant. So I think today it's a gift, and they have to use it as a flag to be proud of the ecosystem Gent is. And it is unique. I think Gent is the life capital of Belgium. The most venues, the most playing opportunities are here. And it's a very fragile ecosystem. We can't take that for granted. The bars who provide play opportunities, it's not easy. And I think the flag of UNESCO is a gift that we now have to use to show what the ecosystem is. And I think the people from the city, they are now searching for a new purpose on that flag, behind that flag. So I think it's a big gift, and I'm very curious how the other cities of UNESCO are doing it right at this moment.
Yeah.
How do they fill that in? Do they all have a music strategy or not?
I've only done 3 profiles to begin with, but as far as I know, it can be very different. There are many cities sitting with that title doing absolutely nothing. And I think that shows you it only makes sense if you do something with it. And it's good to see, like you say, that Gent seems to be now starting to do, again, something with it.
Yeah, I think, you have to be proud of that label, you have to do stuff with it, because there's so many different things in that ecosystem we're talking about. For instance, niche, experimental music, and then I'm looking at you, Matthias, for instance. How important is it that niche and experimental music is given a place in a city like Gent, and how can larger institutions play their role here?
I think it's the soil for everything. It's what we should give the most attention to is the experimental, more underground music. I believe because everything comes from there. That's where things really happen. Things are still wild there, and by wild I don't mean like a going out type of wild, but they are free. They don't have anything to prove to an audience yet, so they are on their own. I do think that the venues in Ghent play a good role in this. I don't know at a policy level what's going on, to be honest. I do think, as you say, like I tend to look also a bit critical now and then. I didn't even know we were a UNESCO city, to be honest.
I think many people don't know.
Yeah, voilà. But it's important to keep the experimental underground layer very much alive, and I think that's also something I don't know who has to think about that, but it's important.
It's
definitely
very important.
And I think we have to engage youngsters. I think they are the key.
Yes.
Youngsters and people from different cultures also.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Is there anything that Vibe does to support genres such as non-Western music and jazz more strongly in a city context where mainstream music often dominates?
Not in a city context. I have a colleague who supports that genres on a professional level for professional artists in the international focus, giving them opportunities to make a career out of also touring and going abroad. But on a city level, it's difficult. But I do know that there are a lot of artists who don't receive opportunities, and I think we are in a very specific sector with very specific unwritten rules, and every venue has a programmer who decides. And the opportunities you receive it because of he decides, and those key players have benefits but also weak points, and I think it's very, very important to give ownership to other people who, with the venue, with the programmers, can create more opportunities for those who don't have a voice to speak or a seat at the table.
Right.
And I think that's part also of the policy. That should be a part of the policy also. It's very hard, but it is a necessity.
Yeah.
What was the question again? Because sorry. I find it very interesting.
If Vibe does something to support like non-Western music and jazz, for instance, if you support that more strongly in a city context, because you also have the mainstream music, which is there anyway. So if there is something that does something specific for that, that was the question in a nutshell.
Thank you.
You're welcome,
Great
Matthias.
question.
When talking about that, I think it's very interesting when you say you have the people, the programmers. That's like also sometimes the gut feel, like picking a band, picking an artist who's coming to play. You also have big venues, smaller venues. Like for instance in Belfast, I don't know, how does Belfast manage to foster maybe collaboration between the larger and the smaller organizations and venues?
With regards to the venues, that is something that we do find quite difficult. I know that it's endemic everywhere, but the UK and Ireland over the last 10 years has faced massive closures of small to medium-sized grassroots music venues, which creates this real gap in opportunities where early career artists may be able to begin in the small pubs and clubs and churches, then gap, nothing. And then they're going on to the bigger capacity venues and the stadiums. What are they supposed to do in the middle? Where are they supposed to perform? And a big part of that is because we are not protected by the agent of change clause, which means that should there be a venue and then an apartment gets built beside it and the apartment complains about the noise in the venue despite the fact that it came second, the venue will still be closed down. And that has killed so many of our venues. It's absolutely atrocious, and it's something that we are trying to do. It's almost difficult to answer because it's in everything. We'll often be asked by our tourism team, you know, what we have visitors coming in, where can they go to find music? And the answer is it's absolutely everywhere. There is no day of the week where there isn't music coming out of every venue in Belfast. You can experience it everywhere. And we're beginning to see that music is starting to support the more impoverished areas of Belfast more. We're trying to leak support for the music sector outside of the city centre and try to consider north, south, east and west Belfast and communities there. We're trying to provide better finance to the small community festivals, bring music back into them more fully and across more genres, so that young people and the people in those communities who otherwise may only have one form of music to engage with are experiencing new opportunities and new music because it's being brought to them. So, for example, recently West Belfast, which is the most impoverished area in all of Belfast, opportunities don't go there, and it can be quite difficult for people. A lot of young people have started channeling their anger and their frustrations and their lack of the opportunities into hip-hop and rap, which is so cool, and they've started doing it in their native Irish language as well, and we're really starting to see a rise of that. And off the back of that, the first ever hip-hop convention took place in West Belfast, and just about a month ago, Ed Sheeran and Gary Lightbody from Snow Patrol came over to Northern Ireland and specifically met with those young people and with that centre and provided them the financing to start a new CIC to educate all the young people in their community.
Okay.
And they saw that because these kids were creating ciphers and putting them up online and just getting all their anger out, and it made an impact, and it's bringing the community to these opportunities that they never would have had.
Okay, so the impact is there, that's for sure. Matthias, I have a question for you as an artist who's both active locally and internationally. How can we create a sort of network in Gent, maybe, where musicians and programmers and venues find and strengthen each other more easily? Because I think something like that does exist for, I don't know, for a bit already, but maybe you have a sort of idea of how it could be better.
Not sure if I have an idea, but again, good question. But also, Gent is a very small city, that's one thing, so it doesn't take too much time to get to know everyone in the scene, everyone, like most people.
I have an idea.
Yes.
Aha!
I have. I think we know we did 60 pop councils through Flanders, and those 60 pop councils were like a little bit like GKO Café Muziek, where we asked musicians their needs. We did it with a survey, and at the pop council we double checked it with them. And the need number one in Flanders was back then and is still rehearsal spaces.
Rehearsal spaces.
And rehearsal spaces can be a community builder.
It's true.
Yeah.
Rehearsal spaces, creation possibilities, stuff.
But don't let me be misunderstood. The rehearsal spaces in Gent, there are rehearsal spaces in Gent. They do a golden job, but there are not enough. We did in 2021. We did a research commissioned by the GKO and Democracy, and the majority of all the musicians who gave their answers in the survey, they told us, we learned that the majority of all those musicians, they rehearsal at home, in their apartment, in their home, and they dislike it. They think it's inconvenient. So the need for a space to rehearse is still the biggest need, also in Gent, I think. And if you take it for granted and you build something, and you have like a community building space where artists meet each other.
Definitely. You have it for the visual arts, the Nucleo. They give a new meaning temporarily for empty buildings. something like this for music is really necessary. That's a great thing, actually. Yeah, places where you can find each other, or like more centered, based in the city center, where you can meet other people. It's well.
Yeah, and if I can make one observation of Gent,
Yes.
as a Gentian,
Yes.
and also as a Vibe family member, I think Gent is the only city where you don't have a music center like Trix in Antwerp or Volta in Brussels.
Right.
We don't have to copy those cities. Gent is Gent, but if you think about it, it is a thing.
Yeah.
And it's not only rehearsal. It's
Artist in residence,
yes.
for instance. Yeah.
And I think that can be also something to think about if you work for the city, or if you're a musician or somebody from the music sector here. And there are good initiatives, like you have small-scale initiatives like Anker or De Cour, and they have like that kind of DNA in themselves. So I think Gent has a lot of things, but they need time to grow, I think.
Yeah. So rehearsal spaces, musical spaces, infrastructures. Virgo, I look at you because you did the comparative studies. How do other cities do that, like rehearsal spaces? Is that something they can say like, okay, it's on our checklists?
It's not checked off.
Yes, that's the
for
problem.
sure. It's an issue everywhere, I think, and the few cities that I've looked at have acknowledged this. In Berlin, I think the city of Berlin has been aiming to provide creative spaces and provide organizational support to find space and coordinate and etc. Also subsidized, because they provide subsidized rehearsal and recording spaces for artists based on an application. But I think it's still not working as well as they would like. It's a difficult puzzle to figure out, but at least the will is there. And also because I think you need to find a delicate balance here. It needs to have this bottom-up energy as well. You can't just deliver a building here and a building there. Communities very often don't happen that way. So another question is, can the city be smart and rather enable and lightly support these communities that already kind of happen on their own, and you just allow them to grow faster, maybe incentivize a little bit here and there, so that it's not basically you come stand in the middle of the room and now here we go, here's a building and now please rehearse in that building. So that doesn't seem to work. This sort of music central housing, house for music, I showed quickly the picture in Aarhus, they're building it, they're very proud of it. I think that's going to be focused mostly on recording, because they want Aarhus to become again the songwriting capital, where there's producing, recording, songwriting, co-creation, etc. But I think the house will also have rehearsal rooms. And it's clearly the idea that synergy will happen. People will just hang out there, meet, maybe try out stuff. So you need to leave space for that kind of thing as well. So it's a problem everywhere. I think in Tallinn nobody has a clue where anybody rehearses.
Yeah.
So it's just beginning. These questions just now need to be asked.
Okay.
One instance where I'm aware of a UNESCO city that has used having a music strategy to get more investment in rehearsal spaces is Hanover, Germany. Oh no. And I get electrocuted and die and have to be buried in Gent.
No.
It happens. No better way to go. Alma, Marina and I were in Hanover in November, and the city were so keen to show us what they are doing to address this. When they created the music strategy, the lack of rehearsal spaces was a major factor that kept coming up time and time again, and their way of dealing with it was fascinating. Hanover, as a heavily bombed city, is full of bomb shelters. And when they were no longer needed, the city tried to take them down, and surprise, surprise, bomb shelters are very sturdy, so they stayed. So they decided to give the bomb shelters to the Muziekscene in their city and say to the university, you can turn them into rehearsal spaces.
That's
so
a cool rehearsal space.
Yeah.
We have that. The Virade.
Yes.
Muziekscene.
Yeah.
They offer some residencies there in the bomb shelter.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think one of the measures that Gent did when it became a UNESCO City of Music in 2009, one of the few programs was to provide for support for rehearsal room renovation. That would be interesting to know how that went, how much that was used, and is it there still? I think it's there still, but I'm not going to ask anybody, but it's something that's discussed later. But I think, it's clearly the understanding has been here for a long time. Mm-hmm. It's a question of figuring out the measure, because operating a rehearsal room system is notoriously difficult. You have the equipment, it's going to be lost, it's going to be broken, find a good governance model for it, who's going to reinvest. Build one, great, but how do you operate it over time that it still sort of works? Nobody has solved it brilliantly, I think.
Yeah. Matthias, do you have a cool rehearsal space?
A cool rehearsal space?
Yeah, do you have that?
Mostly the drummer has one. So in our case, in the band I play with, Nordman, our drummer has a rehearsal space.
Okay.
It's pretty cool, as you could say.
Okay.
My other project, NC3, also the drummer has a rehearsal space.
Drummers are good.
Yes, for rehearsal spaces they are very good. And I have my own small studio.
Okay.
But it would be convenient to have something we could use here in Gent as a real music center.
Yeah.
Like build some community.
Yes.
Yeah.
More drummers and rehearsal spaces.
More drummers and rehearsal spaces, yes. So let's talk a bit about talent development and career opportunities maybe. Virgo, which cities in your study have strong residency programs or models maybe that support artists in their development?
I think one that's visible from the outside is Berlin's. I mentioned Music Board Berlin. They make use of, I think that the state of Berlin has real estate elsewhere, like in New York, and in various very exotic places in the world, where they offer a sort of a residency program. So if you're an artist based in Berlin, you can apply and win it and go to LA, live in the house, create, and there's money for you as well to live and so on. I mean that's great, but then it's great that Berlin has this fascinating infrastructure all over the world. I don't know if Gent's gonna buy like 8 grand houses in Tokyo and Paris and then LA. Probably not. I think for music, this whole residency idea is very new, or fairly new. We currently mostly speak about songwriting camps as a sort of a format. But if you take the residency as an idea from more of the visual arts side of things, then it's something different. It's a place where you go for a month, for 3 months, and so on. And I have a colleague who has been working on it and wants to work on it and to further this idea of bringing the residency format into music more and more. I don't think there's going to be easy funding for it. It's a new idea, and maybe, So I haven't really seen that one done very well. Other than maybe there are these very old school composer societies have composer houses, so you can rent a house and do your composition thing. Mm-hmm. This I see quite a lot, but I think they've fallen to. It's more used for vacation.
Yeah.
Which doesn't mean it's not creative, but it's more about going there on a beach and spending time. I think that's not the point of the policy.
No, because I think, Stan, you said something about it already, Trix in Antwerp. How could Gent maybe focus on a similar model, such as a residency in Trix in Antwerp?
I think Gent has already a lot of players who can do things like that. And they have, for example, Democracy, who is partner for the soundtrack talent development contest. You have very small scale cool things like Girls Go Boom camps. You have the Handelsbeurs with jazz camp for girls. So you have a lot of inspiration already. And we don't have to copy other things from other cities. But one thing Gent is unique for is for the cooperation level, the level of cooperation here. Democracy goes to a lot of places for their gigs, organizing, and I think we have to. Gent has the opportunity to find it with the partners who are already here, and the hard part is taking time for that, I think. Everybody is working very hard in the music industry and music sector, and maybe that can be a part of a new music strategy.
Yeah.
And creating time and seeing how the music sector in Gent can evolve and can grow together, finding solutions.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Also, with the musicians itself, it's for me. I got the most from doing residencies abroad because it gives great connections. You get to know lots of new people who are very active there in the musical scene. When you go back to the country, you can get back in touch. Could be nice to do to find like an exchange type of system as well, because when I go abroad to do a residency, you get to know the venue, the people, and it's a great way to get in connection with the scene. So it would be nice.
I think there's when I was talking about residencies, I think about residencies far away. So I think there's also this thing where you solve a space problem in your city, but then part of this idea is to have the opportunity to spend time in a different environment, be alone with yourself, be faced with yourself. That can be really scary, and then try to do creative work. And maybe here the city network can do this. Like basically, yes, Handelsbeurs can offer something, but maybe not only for Gentians, but for Belfastians or Tallinians and so on. So basically, build the city of residences. I know that Tallinn is interested in that idea. Yeah.
Could be nice. We sent out 5 musicians from Gent. We got 5 Tallinians back. And voila. There's
And voilà.
Nikki, you already do that, no? It's a part of the UNESCO thing, is it?
Yep, every single year, and it's ad hoc as well. We don't have to have it decided at any particular moment. A musician or a city representative can reach out to us anytime and say, this is a genre that we're interested in supporting right now. Do you want to do an exchange? And then select the musicians to take part. And it is like that. You do go, you spend like 8 days away and genuinely get involved in the community there. So that's a major part of our work, and I really want to do it with Gent. So.
Okay. A lot of ideas, a lot of things. I think we covered a lot, not everything, but I think we had a long evening already. So did we forget anything really important talking here in the sofa? Because then we have to say it now.
Of course we did. Obviously.
Stay.
I have one thing on my mind.
Yes.
I think it all starts with artists. And yes. And I think one of the biggest question marks I have at Vibe is, who are all the artists in Gent? And I think a music strategy, I think, starts with the needs from the artists. And I think GKO Café Muziek did a great job last week. And I think there came 50, 60 artists. I think Gent has a lot more artists than that. So if you want to start a music strategy, City of Gent, please do a deep dive, a wide and deep dive in mapping all the artists, trying to reach them and ask them, how are you? What is your need? And if you have that database, if that would be a possibility, I think then you can make a long-term plan to think things through together with everybody in the music ecosystem of Gent. I think that's the first step, and maybe it requires time, maybe a little bit of money also. But if you do that, then you do things proper. It starts with artists and what they need, and there's a lot of work, I think.
Fantastisch. Ik wil daar even aan toevoegen wat Stijn net zegt. Vorige week was er een eerste bijeenkomst van de muzieksector in Gent. Het GKO Café was dat zeker, hè? In de Koer. En daar hebben dus inderdaad een 50-tal artiesten, programmatoren, maar ook cultuurwerkers input gegeven rond hun noden voor de Gentse muzieksector. En er is mij expliciet gevraagd van als er mensen zijn hier vanavond aanwezig die nog meer input hebben, die iets willen vertellen, die input willen geven, ga zeker langs bij het GKO-team. Ze zijn hier ook vanavond en ze zullen zo meteen van achter staan als de lichten weer aangaan. Ze staan in het midden. Buiten, dan ziet iedereen jullie. Daar is het team. Dus die kunnen jullie straks aanspreken met input. Dus geef ze input, want ze willen het zeer, zeer graag. En dan wil ik vragen, zijn er misschien nog vragen uit het publiek voor een van onze 4 mensen in de sofa? Want dan is dit misschien het moment om die vraag even in de groep te smijten. Ja, hier vooraan een vraag. Ja, zeg maar. Ja. Ja. Yes.
Yes, thank you for the very interesting conversation. It was really inspiring. But I had a question, since we're focusing a lot on, the conversation focused a lot on creating a space for creation, in the sense rehearsal rooms, etc. But I think, at least I understood the question is, what could the city provide for musicians? And in my experience, of course, that's only my experience, it's not about a space for creation, since creation will happen anyway with musicians, but it's more a matter of how that the creative product gets to the promoters and to the venues and to the audience. Because what I felt after the discussion about the spaces is like, why create more creation spaces for music that doesn't find its way to the audience and find its way through the industry to the audience?
Good question.
I have a little bit of devil's advocate. I'm so sorry. Purely just from experience in Belfast, I do agree. We're looking at an era where a lot more can be done at home. People have their equipment, they have their laptops. Anybody can be anything. If you have the means to have that in your home already. We're finding that there are a lot of people whose homes aren't fit for purpose for them to work from there. They also may not have the equipment, whereas being able to access a fully stocked rehearsal room opens up a world of music creation that they wouldn't have otherwise. So I think both are absolutely valid. I agree with you about where does the music then go. That is important as well, but I do think a city that feels like it's lacking rehearsal spaces, there must be somebody that needs that space.
Well, I can only acknowledge, I think it's a very well-raised issue, and it's a legitimate question that do we then, in a way, support and incentivize a lot of creation that has nowhere to go? And I think that's exactly the kind of issue that a good music strategy tries to look at. That's why I call careers strategy, career trajectory, or a business trajectory, where you try to look and think through all of those steps that need to be addressed. And the bad news is, of course, the willingness to create and express musically is always going to produce more music than there is space for on the market. That we just have to admit that. But more can be done to provide better opportunity for at least pitching, getting seen, and so on. And I don't have a good solution to that. I think it's a problem everywhere. It's a very universal problem. But it's an opportunity for you to ask this question and keep asking it until you come up with maybe a few blueprints that you can try out. I haven't seen, one good system that I have seen is Music from Ireland, which is the Irish music export organization, and they have what they call a pipeline for music export development, which means that there's a bunch of artists. There's very little industry in general in Ireland. We had a conversation about this because the UK has the industry. So you have a lot of artists doing it on their own. This organization, Music from Ireland, has a system of mentoring. They provide first advice, so basically the artist comes in, they get a number of meetings, and it's very hands-on, almost like getting homework to get done this and that and the third thing. And then there are consecutive steps. If you're ready enough, you find yourself performing in Ireland Music Week, and there the organization makes sure that there's going to be vocalists from elsewhere. And there's multiple things. If there's interest in you, there's funding for it, etc., etc. So I don't have to lay it all out. Maybe it starts a little bit higher up. So maybe what you're referring to is even the first steps. you created something in your residency, great, so what's the next step? And I think there could be solutions, sort of easy solutions through networking, through capacity building, through the fact that maybe there are programmers in the room that are willing to spend a little time with people like you to talk about this issue. How can you get ready, whom to send it, and how, do it well. But I think no system is going to guarantee good results, and that's something you will have to live with.
Okay.
Maybe one more thing, it's a very saturated scene, and it is difficult, I think, when you create music to reach the right person. But Vibe, it's a pretty hands-on solution. Vibe is a great platform for this. If you created something, you can just send an email, get in touch with them, and have a conversation about what could be the next step for my music. They have the great knowledge and network to support musicians.
Go to Silke and Lucas, and Silke is here.
Yes.
And it's the $1 billion question. It's one of the hardest things there is. It's a market. There are too many fish, but you have to work very hard, have a little bit luck, and keep working hard. And talk to Silke.
Okay, thank you. And that's what I think we're going to do just now. For more questions and networking, everybody's in the room here. There's a party starting in a minute, so mingle. And now we just only need to do one more thing, is we need to pick a winner. Is er iemand die nog snel zijn naam in de urne wil steken om de radioshow te winnen? Want dan is dit het moment. Want Timon die gaat naar voren komen. Nog iemand die een radioshow wil winnen? Nee? Eenmaal, andermaal verkocht. Timon, dan gaan we nu iemand uit de urne pikken. Someone who will win a 1-hour radio show at Gent's finest radio station, Gent FM. 1 uur radio op maat voor wie? Is het goed door elkaar geschud? Oké. Oké, Timon, go for it. Het woord. Tada, tada.
And the winner is Firas El Halak. Firas, where are you?
Waar ben je? Kom even tot hier.
We can keep on applauding, he's almost here.
Ja. Jij wint een radioshow maat. Dat is inderdaad good luck, maar ook heel fijn. Vertel ons even heel kort wie je bent en wat je zou willen gaan doen op een
Good thing about this night that it was somehow in English, because my Dutch is kind of non-existent.
Okay, so what will you do?
But that's my problem, because I've been in Gent for 5 years.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, that was nice, because I saw like, is it only artists or people who work with artists?
It's everything.
But I'm happy to be here. It was such a warm evening.
But do you know what you won?
Yeah, 1 hour of radio
Yeah.
to put music.
So, and my
Of
question
course.
is, what are you going to do with it?
I'm gonna put a lot of good artists from the Swana region exactly now where they actually need us to put their music on everywhere in the world.
Okay.
Can I say something? Because we know each other for a couple of years already, and Firas is really someone I really look up to and admire. He's one of the few people here in Gent who is a real community builder. So it's crazy that he won this prize, because he's the one to deserve this, and he's the right person for the right platform.
Okay, looking forward to that 1 hour radio show.
Me too.
We will listen. I don't know when it will be, but we will listen all for sure. Massive thank you to Nikki, Virgo, Stijn, Matthias. Dankjewel iedereen in de zaal om erbij te zijn. En dan nu time to party like it's 2025. Enjoy!